And there you go. I was talking about how unsafe that remaining portion of the building is. It has now collapsed. We're not sure whether that was another missile attack that brought the building down completely, but it has now gone. It was a missile, I'm being told. At least 2 missiles hit the building, the remaining part of the building that was left standing after that first missile strike some 25 minutes or so ago. All right, I was telling you about missiles being fired from Gaza into Israel. They've reached as far as Ashkelon, Ashdod, Tel Aviv, and other areas in southern and central Israel. 5 civilians and a soldier have been killed there. Let's bring in Al Jazeera's Harry Fawcett, who's live for us in southern Israel. Harry, we're just looking at another missile strike. At least 2 missiles hit the remaining part of that building that we saw coming down here earlier. This is the moment when the building was finally brought down. Harry, that was a building that housed media offices and ground floor level shops.
Yes, I mean, as far as the Israelis are concerned, what they're saying in bringing down these towers is that they are also being used in part, whether it be some apartments within them or something else. They're being used in part by fighting factions within Gaza, and that makes them legitimate targets, especially given the fact that they have been ringing up building managers to clear those buildings of civilians before they take them down. It is also a huge statement of power and a very visual statement of destruction in Gaza and visible to the residents of Gaza and also Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad and others. What it also does, of course, is renders hundreds and hundreds of people homeless in the middle of a military escalation. So there is a huge consequence to civilian life that is going to be felt by these big destructive acts. At the same time, Israel is saying that it did kill earlier on Wednesday 6 senior command members of the Hamas General Staff. It says that they were, among them, the head of the Gaza City Brigade and 5 others who were involved in things such as intelligence and rocket production. 10 others who worked in those areas also killed in those attacks. And that is something that has been confirmed by Hamas, is almost certain to elicit a major response from Hamas in terms of more rocket fire. That's what the expectation is in any event. Nonetheless, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, said it was making good on what he'd warned of the day before, and he said that there will be more to come.
I said yesterday that these sons of darkness, the terrorists of Hamas and Islamic Jihad, they bear responsibility. A short while ago, we eliminated senior commanders in the Hamas General Command, including the commander of Gaza Brigade and other commanders. This is just the beginning. We will strike them with hits they did not dream of.
Harry, while all of this going on, there's a parallel crisis unfolding in Israel's mixed Palestinian-Israeli towns and neighborhoods.
Yes, that's right. This is an issue which is also very much occupying the Israeli government. It's a crisis of a related but different kind, one within the country itself and the communities themselves, the Jewish and Arab communities who live here. 20% of the Israeli population is Palestinian Israeli. And what we've seen is after a shooting dead of a Palestinian Israeli man in Lod on Monday night, a massive funeral which led to clashes with the Israeli security forces, and then an eruption really of violence in many mixed Jewish Arab towns, particularly focused on Lod, where we saw Jews attacked with stones, a synagogue set on fire, also Arabs being attacked as well in various places. And so this is a real crisis for the government. They have instituted a civil emergency in Lod. They've put a curfew in place due to come into force at 8 p.m. tonight, so less than an hour away, and 3 other cities as well. The border force, usually used in the occupied West Bank, they have been deployed to try to restore order. The Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledging to use an iron fist to do so.
And Harry, let's talk about the situation in Israel itself, with that barrage of rockets, over 1,000 rockets now having been fired from Gaza into southern Israel. A number of people have been killed there. What's the mood in the country itself? And is there anyone at the moment who is mediating between the two sides to perhaps bring an end to this?
Well, to start with that point, there were efforts, we understand, from the Egyptians who have acted as mediators in the past during these, well, it's difficult to say these sorts of escalations because this is an extremely unusual, rare and enormous one. But yes, there were efforts by the Egyptians to try to mediate, but there seemed to be very little will to step back from the brink, and those efforts, in the short term at least, have failed. As for the impact of what's been coming out from Gaza, as you say, more than 1,000 rockets, an enormous amount of weaponry coming out of Gaza, targeting Israeli cities. Most notably, there was that double barrage in the middle of the night and earlier in the evening on Tel Aviv. We've seen 5 Israeli civilians killed in those rocket strikes. The most recent were overnight in Lod as well. A father and his young daughter, both of them Palestinian Israeli citizens. And then there was another attack early this morning when an Israeli military jeep came under fire from an anti-tank missile, and 1 soldier confirmed killed. 2 others were injured, one of them critically. And so, as I've been saying, that there is just a feeling that more and more of this is what we can expect in the coming days. Certainly a big response from Hamas is likely in the coming hours, and each step along this road, the further both sides go, the harder it is to get back. This is becoming an it's already a deadly situation and a dangerous one. It's almost looking irreversible that there will be a still bigger conflict on the way.
Al Jazeera's Harry Fawcett reporting live from southern Israel. Harry, many thanks indeed. Calls grew on Wednesday for a de-escalation from nations around the world. China expressed deep concern and urged all parties to exercise restraint to avoid further casualties. Russia is calling on Israel to stop all settlement activity in Palestinian territories. Russia's President Vladimir Putin and Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan spoke on Wednesday, with Erdogan demanding that Israel be given a strong and deterrent lesson for its treatment of Palestinians. The EU says that the priority should be de-escalation and the prevention of civilian deaths. Germany says that Israel has a right to self-defense against rockets being fired out of Gaza, and the UN Security Council has been meeting for an emergency session on the escalation. Let's go live now to the White House. Our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, is there for us. The U.S. Secretary of State has spoken to his Israeli counterpart, we're hearing, and the U.S. Secretary of Defense has spoken to his counterpart. The Secretary of State, for his part, asking for both sides to cease violence. Kimberly, what more has he said?
Yeah, this coming down just moments ago. The Biden administration, if we've known for days, has been working behind the scenes in private as well as public statements to nudge Israel to de-escalate the tensions that have been playing out across television screens for days. Apparently that nudging wasn't quite enough. And now we know the Secretary of State just moments ago announcing that he is sending an envoy to the region in order to try and encourage de-escalation. According to Antony Blinken, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Israel and Palestinian Affairs will be going to meet with Israeli as well as Palestinian leaders. The goal, again, de-escalation. The United States saying it is deeply concerned with what they are seeing, particularly in the last 24 hours in Jerusalem, Gaza, and elsewhere. So this comes on the heels of a statement by the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, who has conveyed to his counterpart that the United States believes and Israel has the United States ironclad support when it comes to Israel's what the United States calls legitimate right to defend itself and its people. They are condemning the launch of rockets by Hamas, and they are reiterating the importance of restoring calm. But the question that many have been asking here in the United States, even members of the president's own Democratic Party, is do Palestinians also have that right to defense that the United States government, the Biden administration, continues to reiterate that Israel has, that right of self-defense. And this is still an open and unanswered question. So we're watching very carefully to see what more might come out of this White House. Joe Biden, the U.S. president, did not speak on this when he appeared before reporters in the last hour, but there is a White House briefing coming up. The press secretary will be talking. We'll be watching carefully to see what more she might add.
Do you get the impression, Kimberly, that the White House is perhaps dithering here, or has been caught off guard, that it doesn't really have all its ducks in a row as far as policy is concerned?
There's no question that that is the commentary that is happening here in the United States with respect to the Biden administration. This administration has made clear what it wants to make its top priority is dealing with COVID-19, is getting 70% of the population vaccinated by early July. But the reality is that even if Joe Biden doesn't want to get involved, he is involved because historically the United States has given billions of dollars in military aid to Israel. Add to that, you have the previous administration that was very one-sided with respect to its policy in the region, very much favoring Israel. This is an administration that says it is going to listen to both sides, that it sees the only path forward being a two-state solution. They've also spoken very candidly, the White House press secretary saying that they believe, when it comes to Israel, that the evictions of Palestinians have been working against the interests of trying to resolve this long-standing dispute and bring about peace. So this administration is looking for a path forward. They're hoping that they can find de-escalation, diplomacy, but at the same time, this is not the priority that this administration wants to be working on right now.
Our White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett there, live in Washington. Kimberly, many thanks. The Palestinian Authority is set to meet in the coming hours to discuss the escalating violence. Al Jazeera's Nida Ibrahim reports now from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank.
One element that the Palestinian leadership is focusing on is the diplomatic effort, is trying to reach out to the international community. We've heard from several Palestinian officials who say that the international community's response hasn't been as strong as they hoped for. We've also heard from the Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayeh, who says that this is a natural explosion because the reason for it is the Israeli crimes, as far as Mohammed Shtayeh put it. The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has been holding calls with different leaders of the world, including Jordan's King Abdullah, as well as the Iraqi president and the EU's High Representative Joseph Borrell.
Live pictures from Gaza. We'll take a quick break to get a weather forecast here on Al Jazeera. We'll be back with more coverage of developments out of Gaza and the biggest escalation of violence there since the 2014 war.